Part 21. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 201. 200 Empty City Plan. Feng Tao looked at the mechanical watch on his arm, and asked, "Did Hammer Town reply?" "No answer, Major." He, Feng Tao sneered, "There are still about 2 hours, and I don't want to wait any more. Immediately send an order for the artillery to continue bombing. Don't stop. Let them see how powerful we are." 5 attacking motorcycles drove towards the 5 artillery positions quickly, and soon, those arty self-propelled artillery fired again, and the huge roar resounded through the sky, almost comparable to the thunderclaps in the sky from time to time. Rumbling, the explosion of thunder and artillery formed a symphony of destruction. Boom! 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 Shells kept falling over the deserted Hammer Town, blowing the buildings to pieces. Looking at Iron Hammer Town, which was almost completely engulfed by flames and explosions, Chen Yuyan put down the telescope in his hand and handed it back to Lin Huo. "They won't bomb for too long. The only reason I can think of for them to attack you is to annex you. Since it is going to be annexed, it will not completely destroy this place." Lin Huo raised his binoculars and looked at the blazing Iron Hammer Town with a livid face. "Even if this is the case, that is too much. You must know that I am a settlement here. And according to common sense, they should know that I am not the place to evacuate the people. I have nowhere to go to the former ruined city. That is to say, don't they care how many civilians die?" Chen Yuyan said in a deep voice. "At least Feng Tao thinks so now. The leader of the Bian team in Torch City, that Lu Weiwei, what is his military organization like?" Chen Yuyan asked. "He is directly under an army of about 8,000 people, and is permanently stationed next to Torch City. There are about a dozen towns around Torch City, and 7 of them have garrisons in them. Depending on the size of the town, the garrison ranges from 500 to 1,000 people, but not too many. Mainly infantry. There is another peripheral mobile force. They have a high degree of mechanization, but all supplies are provided by Torch City, and they do not rely on other towns. There are 3 such troops, all of which are regiment level, and Feng Tao is one of them." Lin Huo said. "And his main enemy is Tailong?" Chen Yuyan asked. "That's right, the great warlord of the Forsaken. If you include him, then we can be regarded as being targeted by the 2 biggest forces in this area at the same time." Lin Huo said. "Let the Junkrat gang harass you all the time, you won't be able to do much in a lifetime. If you want to develop, you must offend Tailong. If they are coming, we will just fight them." Chen Yuyan said flatly. "Humph. I endured the humiliation and developed in a low-key manner, hoping to fish in troubled waters after Tailong and Lu Weiwei went to war, but you messed everything up." Lin Huo said angrily. "It's the same as saying that after they stared at us, they stopped fighting each other. As far as the ruined city is concerned, it's not enough." A smile appeared on the corner of Chen Yuyan's mouth. On the contrary, now Lu Weiwei took the initiative to attack, saying maybe it will become a fuse. "You mean, beating Feng Tao in pain may make Tai Long feel that Lu Weiwei has an opportunity to take advantage of it?" Lin Huo understood. "It's not a pain, it's an annihilation." Chen Yuyan said coldly with his smile pulled back. "Where did you get the confidence?" Lin Huo glanced at him. Chen Yuyan didn't answer, but just looked into the distance. "Major Feng." "There is still no response from Iron Hammer Town. We sent scouts to check and found that the town was empty. They seem to have abandoned the town." A soldier came to Feng Tao and said. "It's not giving up, they are trying to fight us in the street." Feng Tao said lightly. Lu Shan turned pale with shock, "But if you fight in the street, you will lose a lot." Feng Tao sneered and said, "It's not likely. The Tic tank was designed with full consideration of street fighting. When the thick top armor is not turned into a turret mode, it can just resist the anti-tank guns in those buildings. Rockets. Besides, how could that group of frightened guys fight us in such a hand-to-hand battle? But, Lu Shan wanted to say something, but Feng Tao waved his hand to stop him. I am more concerned now. Where did they evacuate those people? Feng Tao said. There are several small settlements in the ruined city, which should not be able to accommodate so many people. And if they really evacuate people, Junkrat gang can't let go of so many fat sheep. He rubbed his chin. Could it be that the rumor is true? Junkrat gang was really wiped out? Impossible. Although the Junkrat gang is small in number, they are all extremely ferocious, and they can move unimpeded among the ruins in the south of the city. It is impossible to defeat them without a siege of thousands of people. Lu Shan said. Don't worry about it. How long will this ion storm be over? Feng Tao turned his head and asked those staff officers. One of the staff officers with eyes looked at the calculation data on the computer and said, although I can't access the main database online, I still built a simple model to calculate. There should be 12 to 18 hours left for this ion storm. It's about to end. That being the case, let's seize this time to occupy Iron Hammer Town. After the ion storm dissipates, our artillery unit can support the front line more conveniently. Order the 2nd Infantry Company to enter Iron Hammer Town immediately. Armored 1st Company and 2nd Company, 1st Company of Reconnaissance, and 3rd Company of Infantry, get ready. Feng Tao said firmly, I hope that after the communication is restored, the first message we send to General Lu will be the message of the successful occupation of Iron Hammer Town. Yes. Move the headquarters forward, and the tick tanks advance one by one, pressing the defense line to the 1-kilometer area outside Iron Hammer Town. Feng Tao continued to order. Yes. The army immediately moved into action. In the defense line outside the city, the tracks of the tick tanks began to reverse, and they all got up from the half-buried state, resumed the marching mode, and then pushed forward. More than 100 people from the 2nd Infantry Company, led by 3 armored vehicles and 3 attack motorcycles, marched towards Iron Hammer Town in 20 pickup trucks. At a distance of 1 kilometer from Iron Hammer Town, the infantry got out of their vehicles one after another and formed a tactical team of 10 people to enter the town from several directions at the same time. There was no sound in Iron Hammer Town, except for the thunder that had begun to fade away. There was only the sound of some unclosed windows colliding under the strong wind. Report. The 2nd Infantry Company has occupied several buildings on the outskirts of Iron Hammer Town without encountering any resistance, not even a single person. A soldier came to Feng Tao and reported. Feng Tao pondered for a while, and ordered, let the 2nd Armored Company and the 3rd Infantry Company enter the city, and use tick tanks to occupy the main roads. The 2nd Infantry Company advances to the industrial area of Iron Hammer Town and occupies the factory. Yes. Report. The 2nd Armored Company has set up defenses on the main road without any resistance. The 2nd Infantry Company has occupied the factory area, and there is also no resistance. Half an hour later, the messenger reported again. Expand the defense area. Let follow-up troops enter one by one. Move the command center to the barracks in Iron Hammer Town. Feng Tao said. Report. We have basically controlled the entire territory of Iron Hammer Town. After more than half an hour, the messenger came to report again. Search the entire town to make sure there are no traps left. Then deploy defenses on the east side of Iron Hammer Town to prevent the enemy from counter-attacking. The more critical it is at this time. Report to me every 10 minutes. Feng Tao's face was still dignified. Constantly give instructions. Yes. He raised his hand and looked at his watch. It was around 6 p.m., and under the influence of the low-pressure clouds brought by the ion storm, the whole place was as dark as night. Feng Tao's troops have set up high-power searchlights in various places, but they still cannot illuminate the entire town. What are they thinking? In such a situation, it is impossible to launch a counterattack. Feng Tao rubbed his chin. Puzzled, could it really give up? But with more than 5,000 civilians, and where can they go? Also, the granaries in the city are full, so what do they eat? He looked at the lightning that was constantly falling in the sky. Even if you can go to those small villages to live temporarily, how long can you live? I'm afraid there will be a famine in less than 3 days. Seeing his appearance, Lu Shan leaned over and said obsequiously, but we have already occupied Iron Hammer Town, this is a fact. Could it be that they can fight back? They even gave up the only hopeful street fighting, what else can I do? Has the power supply in the city been restored? Feng Tao ignored him and only asked the soldiers next to him. No, the power supply facilities have been damaged, and the power supply cannot be restored in a short time. The soldier replied. Nothing was damaged, only the power supply facilities. They wanted to attack at night? But, why? Feng Tao became more and more strange. At this moment, suddenly a messenger ran in and shouted, "Report! We found a family of 3 in a basement. They hid inside and did not escape." Feng Tao's eyes lit up, he stood up abruptly and said loudly, "Bring them here immediately." "Yes." The orderly promised to leave. "Wait a minute." Feng Tao stopped him again, "Remember to tell our people, treat them well, don't force them. Give them some chocolate to comfort them." "Yes." Thanks to 16829742124 and 865 for the reward of 100 starting coins. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 202. 201 Duan Hessian. The family of 3 was brought before Feng Tao, a couple in their 50s and a child aged 18 or 9. Each of them held a piece of chocolate in their hands, but they didn't dare to eat it at all. They just looked at Feng Tao with great fear. Seeing them, Lu Shan's eyes suddenly lit up. "I know you guys. I met you when Chi Wei sent me to Iron Hammer Town to do some shopping. You sell clothes in Iron Hammer Town, right? The oversized dress on Chi Wei's body, the special clothes are made here, and you charged me a high price. My name is Duan Mingqing, and I am indeed selling clothes in Iron Hammer Town." It turned out that this was the owner of the clothing store who had conflicts with Murphy's and Yi at that time. "Why didn't you evacuate here? Why did the forest fire evacuate?" Feng Tao tried his best to put on a kind expression, but his bumpy face on the back of the moon was hard to look at. "My store was bulldozed by them with tanks, and no one gave me an explanation. Why should I go with him?" The clothing store owner's eyes flashed with resentment. "As for the forest fire, he seems to have we got someone's support. We were going to withdraw to wait for an opportunity to counterattack, and then we evacuated everyone." "Support, could it be Chen Yuyan?" Lu Shan shouted. "Chen Yuyan, is that the guy you said was alone but with a lot of bazookas?" Feng Tao turned around and asked. "Yes, he also has a terrible monster, and that monster can spray venom." Lu Shan said. "Monster? Is it a Tiberium demon?" Feng Tao pondered. "It's not like, because the monster's venom was sprayed on people, and the flesh was directly corroded." Lu Shan replied with lingering fear. He had participated in Chi Wei's attack on Xingfu village. The firepower and trackers are impressive. "What support did they bring?" Feng Tao asked Duan Mingqing's family again. "There are some tanks and some armored vehicles. They say that the tanks are super tanks, the kind of light tanks that can easily kill forest fires." Duan Mingqing said. "What kind of tank?" "Well, give me a rough drawing." Feng Tao said. "Let me draw." Duan Mingqing's son volunteered. He took the pen and paper, and said while drawing, "This tank is about the same size as the M2F light tank in the Lin Huo army, but it is slightly shorter. But you can clearly feel it. It is much heavier than the M2F, and the barrel and caliber of the main gun installed on the turret are much higher than that of the M2F, so it feels that the firepower is not at the same level. Feng Tao took this painting. Although it was not lifelike, he did draw all the details worthy of attention. After looking at it, he asked, "Are you sure there are 6 pairs of load wheels?" "It's definitely 6 pairs, I counted them," the young man said. "Not bad, boy, what's your name?" Feng Tao couldn't help but glance at him more, and found that the young man's expression was normal, and he didn't seem too flustered. "My name is Duan Hessian, sir," the young man answered with a bow. "Follow me from now on, you are a sergeant now." Feng Tao waved his hand. Duan Mingqing was overjoyed, and quickly patted Duan Hessian on the back and said, "That's great. That's great. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir." Duan Hessian bowed again, his expression didn't change much. "Thank you." Feng Tao waved Duan Mingqing and his wife to go back first, while Duan Hessian stood behind him. He looked at the tank painted by Duan Hessian and said, "The other party didn't reveal anything else. This kind of tank is undoubtedly the main battle tank style before the last war. GDI likes this kind of large tonnage weapon, but the weapon style of the weapon will not be so round. It should be the style of Russia before the last war. I read it in a book." Duan Hessian said behind him. Feng Tao nodded to express his understanding. "With this kind of tank, and this Chinyan has a large number of rocket launchers, then we may assume that he found a pre-war arsenal somewhere. But with this kind of tank, it is not enough to shake our strength. The 90mm artillery of the TIC tank is much more advanced than these ancient equipment, and can completely penetrate their armor. There have been rumors in the city that the Junkrat gang has been wiped out. It is true that since 3 weeks ago, the ruins south of the ruined city have not been allowed to approach, but no one knows exactly what happened." Duan Hessian said again. "Major Feng, otherwise, we don't go into the city today, we just spend the night in the forest fire barracks outside the city. Let's wait until the plasma storm is over?" a staff officer whispered beside him. "Nonsense. We've already occupied the town, so there's no way to get out. That Chunyuan only has some bazookas and outdated tanks. What are you afraid of?" Lu Shan said loudly, pretending to be a tiger. Feng Tao closed his eyes and thought for a while, then suddenly opened his eyes, and said, "It's not safe here in the barracks. If the other party wants to do tricks, it's much more convenient to do it in the barracks than inside the town. Order the ministries to prepare. The army is stationed in the barracks, and all other troops enter the city, immediately set up defenses." "Yes. The night is falling, but it doesn't matter to this weather, anyway, it's pitch black after 4 p.m. It was already 3 o'clock in the morning of the next day, and the lightning in the sky was much thinner, but it had already started to rain lightly, and the sound of the pattering rain seemed a little gloomy in the darkness. Feng Tao's troops had already occupied the entire Iron Hammer town, and they methodically set up a line of defense in the direction from Iron Hammer town to the interior of the ruined city. There were originally city walls and sentry towers here. TIC tanks were also placed under the city walls, half buried in the soil and turned into turrets, with bright lights shining forward. Since the power supply device has been damaged, although the engineering troops are rushing to repair it, the power supply has not been restored yet. They had no choice but to use their own generators to restore the power of the searchlights on some sentry towers. The night watchman controlled the searchlights to sweep continuously around the city wall. The whole army is ready to fight, but they still have to rest. After all, they haven't closed their eyes for 2 days since the raid on Iron Hammer town. Half of the troops were left to watch the night, and the other soldiers took the time to fall asleep. Feng Tao also understood that his raid was very rough and eager for quick success, and the physical fitness of the soldiers had been greatly tested. Therefore, he planned to rest in Iron Hammer town for 3 days, just waiting for the evacuated civilians to run out of food and not fight. At that time, Lin Huo and Chunyuan had no choice but to forcefully charge their own strong defense line. A soldier on duty on the sentry tower yawned, pulled himself together, and continued to control the searchlight. The bright beam of light swept back and forth under the city wall. Sudden. A black shadow flashed past his line of sight. He hurriedly took photos, but found nothing. In the distant darkness, there seemed to be faint hissing sounds. The soldier shook his head, thinking that he was dizzy, so he took out a cigarette and lit it. However, the moment he lowered his head to light his cigarette, several black shadows crawled past at high speed, but he didn't pay attention at all. In fact, it wasn't just him. When everyone focused their attention on the road on the east side of the town, no one noticed that a large number of hideous and terrifying monsters had crawled in from the walls around the town like they were walking on the ground. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 203. 202 The Eve of Biochemistry. In Hammertown, in a 3-story residential building, a squad of soldiers was preparing to eat. Go get the can and warm it up. A man who looked like a non-commissioned officer said to the soldiers next to him. Sir, didn't the above say not to light a fire? A soldier replied in a low voice. Hey. Just bake it in an alcohol stove, it won't get in the way. Our building is located in the city, and those muddy legs can't do anything with us. The squad leader slapped the soldier on the back of the head lightly, scolding with a smile said, Go to the hot pot, it's raining outside, eat something hot, so you don't have to go out to change shifts and catch a cold. Hey. The squad leader is kind to us, haha. A soldier next to him said with a smile, and took out the alcohol stove. Several people formed a circle and tried to keep the fire from leaking out, just holding the cans and roasting on the fire. Let's just say, our hard days are finally over. The squad leader opened a can of roasted food, dug out a ball with a spoon, and stuffed it into his mouth. Why? Asked a soldier. Do you know why our Major Feng fought for this battle from General Lu and raided Iron Hammer Town? The squad leader shook his spoon and said, You have also seen that the garrisons in those places in Shajin Town passed by call it a comfort. Eat and drink spicy food all day long, go shopping in the town and flirt with girls when you have nothing to do. And our mobile troops stationed outside can only drink northwest wind. Oh, yes. And we have more training. What kind of lunch meat are we eating? Another soldier complained while eating. So, after we occupy Hammertown this time, we will become the garrison of Hammertown. Although we will return most of the tanks, it doesn't matter. As long as we become the garrison of the town, we will have a good life in the future. The squad leader said with a smile. Haha. I don't know how the girls in Iron Hammer Town are like. Another younger soldier scratched his head and said, Well, I haven't married a wife yet. Then find one in Hammertown. Ha 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 ha. Several people laughed loudly. Bah. Keep your voice down, old man. We are now in a state of combat readiness, lights and noise are strictly prohibited. The squad leader slapped the laughing soldier on the head again, Eat quickly. You have to change shifts after eating. The superiors said, Iron people in Hammertown may want to fight back. Hey. What are those mud-legged people fighting back? I heard Su Laowu from the armored company say yesterday that they drove the M2F tanks and rushed over to the positions of our TIC tanks. More than a dozen vehicles were destroyed by us. Ha ha ha. A person next to him laughed in a low voice. Suddenly, there was a soft bang from upstairs. A soldier with sharp ears was taken aback for a moment, and he quickly interrupted the others, Wait a minute. Is there a sound upstairs? Everyone immediately became vigilant. Are you sure? Didn't you live upstairs with Zhang Airway and Li Dago just now? The squad leader made a gesture and turned off the alcohol stove. Everyone raised their guns, held their breath, and listened carefully in the dark. Except for the sound of rain and thunder, there seemed to be no other sounds around. Suddenly, there was a click. A flash of thunder flashed, and almost at the same time, there was another bang from upstairs. Several soldiers looked at each other, and they could see that each other's eyes reflected a little light in the darkness, and their breathing became short of breath. Zhang Erwei, Li Daegu, and you, the three of you are familiar with the upstairs where you sleep, go up and have a look. Be careful. The squad leader ordered in a low voice. Let's go, maybe it's a cat, hee hee. Zhang Erwei laughed dryly, and the three turned on the flashlights and walked up with guns. Although their movements were light, the wooden stairs creaked. After a while, however, the footsteps disappeared, and there was no movement from upstairs. The squad leader and the rest of the people looked at each other, and said in a deep voice, "The situation is wrong. The upstairs is so big, the three of them should have reported it long ago. Let's go up and have a look." A soldier said, suddenly felt liquid dripping on his face, and wiped it, but it felt sticky. He moved his hand over and smelled it, only to smell a strong smell, the smell of blood. Click. Another flash of lightning flashed outside, and then the lightning flashed instantly, and the soldier saw clearly at the same time, what was stained on his hand was a big puddle of blood. Blood. It's blood. The soldier panicked, and quickly turned on the flashlight and shook it around. The squad leader immediately scolded, "Turn off the flashlight. This will expose our position." Before he could finish speaking, he saw an extremely terrifying monster flashing past under the light of the flashlight. There is something. The squad leader immediately opened fire towards that side. Da-da-da-da. Everyone followed suit and shot over there. Countless bullets smashed the furniture in that direction to pieces. Hiss. There was a sudden hiss, and then the soldier who turned on the flashlight was entangled in a slippery tongue, and was suddenly dragged over. After a short scream, there was no sound. "There are monsters! There are monsters!" A soldier shouted. "Turn on the flashlight. Hurry!" The squad leader said quickly, and everyone immediately turned on the flashlight to shine around. In the light, a monster that seemed to have been skinned was lying on the ceiling. Its brain was directly exposed, its claws were sharp and developed, and its long tongue swayed like a poisonous snake. The monster was hit by a few bullets, but it seemed to be fine, and quickly crawled away from the ceiling. Before these people could catch their breath, there was the sound of glass breaking upstairs, and then the wooden floor above a soldier's head shattered, and a tongue wrapped around his neck and dragged him up. Also, the squad leader roared and fired at the gap in the ceiling, but then he heard a hissing sound, and he hurriedly took a flashlight to shine on it, only to see several such terrifying monsters who didn't know what to do. The time has come to crawl in and completely surround them. They opened their mouths to reveal their sharp fangs. Bloody, stinky mucus flowed from the corners of their mouths. There was even a head stuck in one of the monster's claws. It seemed that this head couldn't fall off. He flicked his paw impatiently. The squad leader recognized it instantly. It was Li Daegu's head. Boundless fear instantly exploded in the brain. The squad leader let out a desperate roar, and opened fire at those monsters crazily. Ah! Da-da-da-da-da-da. Gunshots, roars, and screams resounded in this residential building, and the flames from the muzzle pierced the darkness from time to time, but it did not cause any waves in Hammertown. Because at this moment, almost every place in Hammertown was attacked by this terrible monster. There are monsters. Monsters. Ah! Run! Tank, tank! A blood-soaked soldier broke open the door and ran out, but was thrown to the ground by a licker before he could run a few steps, and there was a shrill scream. An M2F light tank was rampaging on the road, only to see several lickers lying on the tank, and they were trying to open the hatch with their long sharp claws. The panicked driver crashed the tank into a residential building with a bang. The violent impact knocked open the rear hatch of the tank, and a licker took the opportunity to get in. More than a dozen soldiers ran to the main road in a group, retreating while firing around, but in front of them were a large number of lickers and hell dogs. These lickers jumped from the walls and ceilings one after another. These soldiers opened fire desperately, but their numbers are getting smaller and smaller. In the end, there were 4 people left, who had to stand back to back, resisting desperately. Wow! The gunshots and screams were quickly swallowed by countless hell dogs and lickers. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 204. 203 Complete Annihilation, Part 1. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. A burst of gunshots woke up Feng Tao, who was dozing on the seat, and he stood up abruptly and said loudly, "What happened? Where did the gunshot come from?" The staff officer on duty looked confused. "I don't know. There were sporadic gunshots just now. I have sent someone to check, but they haven't returned yet, and no one has come back to report from various places." Feng Tao jumped up all of a sudden, and kicked the staff officer out with one kick. He roared angrily, "You're still doing this to me now that there's been gunshots. Trash. Go to the infantry tomorrow. Even report." Turning around, he found that Duan Hessian had already picked up an assault rifle and was wearing an armed belt on his body. He asked, "What the hell are you doing?" Duan Hessian glanced at him, and replied, "Because of the ion storm, the communication was interrupted, and we were attacked by unknown forces at night. What we have to do is to arm ourselves first, and then gather the survivors bit by bit, and prepare to fight back." Feng Tao looked at the other staff officers in the headquarters, and shouted, "Did you hear that? Get me a gun right away. Tell the guard platoon to assemble immediately." After speaking, he went to the staff officer who was kicked away by him at the beginning, tore off his second lieutenant's shoulder badge and threw it to Duan Hessian. "Now you will take his place." The gunshots in Iron Hammer Town became more and more intense and louder. It was obvious that the area being attacked was expanding, and screams could be heard constantly. Feng Tao rushed out of the command post with a group of staff officers holding guns, and the 2 guard platoons deployed nearby immediately gathered. Not long after leaving the camp, he saw 2 unrecognizable corpses lying on the ground. "This is the messenger I sent out?" the staff officer who was kicked away just now shouted. Feng Tao ignored him, just walked over and squatted down to examine the wound on the corpse. It wasn't killed by a bullet, not even a blade. It looks like it was killed by a beast. Beast? Could it be Tabor? Lee a demon? Is the other party a mutant? Someone from Iron Dragon? His brows were tightly frowned. Just as he was thinking, the corpse suddenly opened its pupilless eyes, screamed and got up, grabbing Feng Tao. Feng Tao reacted quickly, grabbing the corpse's arm with his backhand, but soon he discovered that the strength of the corpse was unimaginable. Even he was pushed back again and again. "Asshole! Are you crazy?" Feng Tao yelled at the corpse. He thought this person was not dead yet. However, the corpse didn't care, just grabbed him desperately and pushed him back, then suddenly lowered his head and bit Feng Tao's hand. "Wow!" Feng Tao yelled in pain, and finally broke free. He took out the pistol. Bang! Boom! Several bullets hit the body, but the body was still howling and moving forward. Boom! Another shot. The corpse was hit on the head, and finally fell to the ground without moving. Turning around, it was a soldier from the guard platoon who fired the shot. "Medical soldier!" A staff officer called, and a doctor hurried over with a medicine box to bandage Feng Tao. "There's something upstairs over there," a soldier shouted, and everyone hurriedly looked over. Under the light beams of dozens of flashlights, only a few scary monsters that looked like skinned people were building crawl on the outer walls. "Hit me!" Feng Tao gave an order, and dozens of assault rifles opened fire immediately. There was a lot of gunfire, and it also attracted more monsters in the darkness. Dog. A dog is rushing over. There are still dead people. Shoot. Don't let them come. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. When Hammer Town was in chaos, at the entrance to the east side of Hammer Town. Here, a city wall separates Hammer Town and Ruin City, and there is a sentry tower every 100 meters. Now these sentry towers are all occupied by Feng Tao's troops. The soldiers are condescending on the sentry towers, controlling searchlights to scan around. In front of the city wall, more than 20 tick tanks were distributed into two lines of defense alternating vertically and horizontally. All of them entered the turret mode and half buried themselves in the soil. The powerful firepower of the 6-barreled Getter cannon and the 90mm caliber rapid-fire gun equipped on the tank will form a terrible fire net and completely block the passage. No matter what the opponent hides in the ruined city, this line of defense is enough to completely tear them apart. After finding the lickers to attack in the city, the soldiers on the defense line immediately became alert, but they also knew the reason to stick to their posts. Although they had doubts in their hearts, they did not leave without authorization. Suddenly, a soldier on a sentry tower pointed to the nearby sentry tower and shouted, "There are monsters over there." Several other soldiers looked over and saw several lickers climbing up the sentry tower. They opened fire immediately. Da-da-da. Several lickers were immediately shot down by several assault rifles. But they struggled on the ground, but got up again. At this time, other sentry towers also opened fire. The target of the fire is the nearby sentry tower. The lickers have already targeted here. Seeing the sentry tower being attacked, the driver of the tick tank in front couldn't sit still. Just when they were hesitating whether to go back immediately to support or continue to hold the line of defense, they suddenly heard the sound of an engine coming from the darkness ahead. Before they could react, there was a sudden bang, and the city wall behind was hit by a high explosive shell. Under the violent explosion, a gap was blown open in the city wall. "Be careful! Enemy tanks are coming." The driver of the tick tank immediately understood. Several tanks in the front row turned their turrets, and the 6-barreled Getter machine gun began to rotate, only to hear a series of gunshots, and countless tracer bullets were fired, pulling out streaks in the night. Fire wire. Sure enough, in the darkness, more than a dozen tanks were approaching. "Fire the main gun." The commander gave an order, and the 90mm rapid-fire gun on the tick tank fired instantly. Boom! The armor-piercing projectile accurately hit the frontmost T-72 tank, and a piece of explosive reactive armor on the front armor of the tank exploded instantly. The violent reverse explosion created a ricochet. The other side. Meanwhile, other tick tanks are firing. The T-72 main battle tank is also firing back. The sound of cannon fire and explosions can be heard endlessly. However, in the midst of countless explosions, only countless monsters rushed up quickly. These monsters looked like huge upright lizards, with a stocky body and sharp claws. They were mixed in the middle of the T-72 tanks, and quickly rushed towards the position of the tick tanks. Hunter Alpha. The 6-barrel gate cannon on the tick tank immediately adjusted its target, and the dense rain of bullets slanted towards the Hunter, as if splashing water. The few Predator Alphas in the front were instantly smashed into minced meat by the rain of bullets. No matter how tough their skin was, no matter how bulletproof their skin was, it was useless. But when these Hunter Alpha fell down, the figures lying behind them suddenly jumped up, and continued to rush towards the tick tank at an extremely fast speed. The driver on the tick tank took a closer look and realized that these small figures were metal mechanical spiders with a diameter of about 1 meter. Hey, the gate machine gun kept firing, smashing the mechanical spider into pieces in an instant, but the Hunter Alpha behind kept rushing over with the terrifying robot on its back. Thanks to 124 simple 865 for the reward of 500 starting coins. Thank you for the 100 starting point coins rewarded by Zingai. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 205. 204 Complete Annihilation, Medium. Boom. A T-72 tank was hit by several 90mm caliber armor-piercing rounds from a TIC tank, and almost all the explosive reactive armor on the front was knocked down. Finally, with a bang, the armor of the tank was penetrated, and the warhead of the armor-piercing projectile entered the interior of the tank, tumbling continuously, and the shrapnel flew across, causing extremely tragic damage. Most of the various instruments and equipment inside the tank were destroyed, but the armor-piercing projectile was not of sufficient caliber after all, and did not penetrate all the way to the tank engine. The normal crew members had all been killed by shrapnel long ago, but now inside the tank is a monster multiplied by the Ne-beta parasite. Although the parasite was covered with wounds all over its body, green blood flowed everywhere, and a lot of mutated and multiplied branches were cut off, the heart at the commander's position was still beating vigorously. I can only see that the heart is constantly vibrating, and the parts cut off by the shrapnel begin to mutate, proliferate, and grow again. At the same time, the eyeball on the sight was fixed on the outside, and then a branch pressed the button, the automatic loader started to work, and an armor-piercing bullet was inserted into the barrel. Boom! There was a loud noise, and the 125mm caliber tail-stabilized sabot projectile was fired instantly, and the sub-caliber armor-piercing projectile hit a TIC tank almost instantly. At a distance of less than 500 meters, even the armor of the TIC tank couldn't resist, and it was instantly pierced. The Ne-beta parasite shook its tentacles with satisfaction as it watched the TIC tank explode into a ball of fire. Who knew it didn't matter when it flicked, the stinky green blood on its body was thrown into the already damaged driving instrument. The contact between the liquid and the leaking circuit immediately caused a short circuit, and the electric spark ignited the damaged fuel tank, and finally detonated the ammunition compartment. Boom! With a loud noise, a large number of high-explosive shells exploded, and the entire turret of this T-72 tank was blown out. I don't know if it was good luck or bad luck. The blown-up turret was so alive that it just hit a TIC tank and made a bang. The TIC tank that was hit had to start reversing and exit the turret mode, and at this time there was finally a hole in the fire net in front of the tank. All I saw was a terrifying robot crawling over at high speed. The mechanical claws shrank instantly and then bounced up suddenly. They jumped over a distance of more than 10 meters and climbed onto the turret of the TIC tank in one fell swoop. The alloy claws in front of the terrorist robot and the drill bit on the abdomen started working at the same time, and quickly destroyed the bearings under the turret. At this time, the turret of the TIC tank, which was preparing to deform, was stuck at the end and could not move, completely becoming a waste. Under the desperate cover of more than a dozen T-72 tanks, Hunter Alpha led the terrorist robot and quickly rushed into the TIC tank's defense line. And at this distance, the lethality of the terrorist robot to the tank is completely fatal. The battle line has been completely messed up, and the TIC tank started to fire indiscriminately around, because the driver found that there were enemies everywhere. There are still many tanks exiting the turret mode and preparing to retreat towards the interior of the town, but their speed cannot outrun the terrorist robot at all. Chen Yuyan and Lin Huo stood on the ruins of a building in the rear, watching the battle situation here with binoculars. Lin Huo's face was a little ugly, and he said in a deep voice, "Where the hell did you get so many biological weapons in Resident Evil? And the terrifying robots in Red Alert? Those tanks came from where did it come from? You brought it here in the world of Resident Evil? How many points does it cost?" The reason why his face was ugly was because he found that if Chen Yuyan used this trick to deal with him, he would be powerless to resist. And it is possible that due to the existence of a large number of civilians, the T-virus will spread, turning the entire town into a city of zombies. He now understands the meaning of what Chen Yuyan said before, I hit you because I was worried about the your loss. Let's start fighting back. Chen Yuyan didn't answer his question, but just said lightly. Lin Huo took a deep breath and nodded to Jin Shan, who was standing aside. Jin Shan immediately gave a military salute, came to the armored troop of Iron Hammer Town, which was already ready to go, and shouted loudly, let's go. Before dawn, completely destroy the enemy. Take back Iron Hammer Town. The soldiers responded and started the tanks. I only saw more than 30 M2F light tanks covering hundreds of soldiers and started to move forward, rushing towards the town of Iron Hammer. Lin Huo looked back at the dozen or so people in black windbreakers standing behind him, and said, Chosen One, move out. Remember, those monsters are not enemies. Our enemies are the Walking Dead and Nod soldiers. Chen Yuyan also sorted out his equipment, put on the combat uniform with bulletproof mode, pulled the bolt of the Scorpion Eye assault rifle in his hand, and said to Yi and Drago beside him, we also set off now. Let the soldiers of the Legion of Ruins also move. Yi nodded, skillfully fiddled with the assault rifle in her hand, and followed closely behind Chen Yuyan. And Drago waved his hand violently, and the 80 soldiers of the Ruin Legion also took up their weapons one after another, and started to advance behind Chen Yuyan. These soldiers do not have uniforms yet, and the training time is too short, making them look like a group of motley troops. In other words, they are actually a group of motley crews. The M2F light tank has no chance of winning against a TIC tank that is an era older than them, and it is a TIC tank that has turned into a turret mode and is ready for battle. The two sides clashed head-on, just like meeting Tiger King's Sherman, and it was normal to have an exchange ratio of dozens to 0. This was the result when Lin Huo tentatively attacked Feng Tao's defense 2 days ago. However, this time, the situation is completely different. The defense line of the TIC tanks has been completely shattered, more than 20 tanks have been destroyed by terrorist robots, 7 or 8, and the rest are either fleeing or on the way to escape. When Lin Huo's tank troops rushed up to catch up with the TIC tanks again, they faced such a remnant army. While the M2F 75mm guns were underpowered, the side and rear armor of the TIC tank was vulnerable. And if the distance is close enough, the 75mm caliber gun still has some chance to penetrate the armor of the TIC tank. After a fierce exchange of fire, the outer defense line of Iron Hammer Town was finally broken through. Lin Huo's infantry followed the tank troops and rushed into the city. However, when they entered the city, what they saw was a scene like hell. There are gunshots and screams everywhere, mutilated corpses are everywhere, and there are even some zombies wandering around, rushing towards the survivors following the sound. Blood can be seen everywhere in the houses on the side of the road, and there are lickers and hellhounds running in front of them from time to time. These terrifying monsters stimulated the spirit of the soldiers on the other side of the forest fire again. They firmly grasped the guns in their hands and moved forward tremblingly. From the bloodstains and bullet holes everywhere, it can be seen what a terrible battle has been experienced here. And all of this was brought about by that person, Chen Yuyan. Maybe starting today, this name is enough to stop children crying at night? Almost without much effort, Lin Huo's infantry had already reoccupied half of Hammer Town. The remnants of Feng Tao's army had gathered towards the west of the city for the final resistance. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 206. 205 Complete Annihilation, Part 2. Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. The dense gunfire didn't stop for almost a moment. On the main road of Iron Hammer Town, an army of 700 or 800 zombies is rushing forward in darkness. There are hundreds of hellhounds among the zombies, and more lickers are walking along the buildings on both sides. Climb over quickly. 5 tick tanks were parked sideways at the intersection. The tank's gate machine gun had run out of ammunition, so it could only fire continuously with its 90mm caliber rapid-fire gun. Relying on these few tick tanks as cover, the remaining soldiers of Feng Tao's army are making the final resistance. Now there are less than 200 soldiers left here. And what Feng Tao brought over was an entire armored regiment, a total of 1,500 people. These 200 people are already the last force that Feng Tao and the others can gather. It's not that everyone else is dead. Inside the town, there are still gunshots and explosions, which are some other scattered surviving soldiers who are resisting. But their resistance is destined to not last long, because the roads everywhere have been blocked by zombies, let alone the lickers who come and go without a trace. This deadly night attack was completely beyond everyone's expectations. No one thought that the other party did not do anything in the city, but waited until night for the lickers and hellhounds to launch a sneak attack. For lickers, the city walls around Hammer Town are just decorations, and they can easily climb in. The city walls around Hammer Town are made of discarded concrete blocks from the ruined city. For Cerberus, it is not too easy to drill a dog hole or something. Everyone in Feng Tao's army, including Feng Tao himself, after discovering that Iron Hammer Town had indeed been emptied, all focused all their eyes on the road on the east side of the town. Because that was the only passage leading to the interior of the ruined city, they could only think of this only counter-attack direction if they wanted to break their heads. But who knew, the real attack broke out inside this empty city. The soldiers who were resting in rotation, there was no room for resistance to the lickers and hellhounds who came quietly in the dark. The soldiers killed by B.O.W. will soon turn into zombies and continue to attack other people, which makes the biochemical terror expand rapidly like a snowball. By the time Feng Tao reacted, the situation was completely out of control. Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. The soldiers hid behind the tick tank, and several searchlights illuminated the front. They fired desperately, and the dense bullets poured down like rain. The tracer bombs continued to draw strips of red light, and under the instant light, the terrifying faces of those zombies were vividly seen. Zombies can only be killed by headshots, and it is the same as before in Raccoon City. No one can use an assault rifle to hit a moving target within 100 meters and still shoot headshots. Therefore, although the soldiers of Feng Tao's army were extremely dense in firepower, not many zombies were actually killed. What's more, the lickers flying over from the buildings on both sides will also disperse a large part of the density of firepower. In the middle of the corpse group, you can still see a few M2F tanks. This is the line of defense they organized before. After dropping dozens of corpses, they were forced back by the zombie group and could only build with the last few tanks. This line of defense. Most of the heavy weapons were lost in the previous attack, and the remaining bazookas and flamethrowers didn't have much ammunition. Everyone felt that the end was coming. Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. The soldiers fired numbly, and those who rushed towards them were all wearing black military uniforms, and they were all their former comrades in arms. Shoot! Shoot! Don't let them get close. Isn't that Yan Peng? Yan Peng. My brother. Why are you doing this? A soldier opened fire crazily while crying, knocking down a big zombie among the corpses. It was broken and kept struggling to crawl over. Seeing this scene, the soldier cried even harder. The cries brought with them feelings of desperation and sadness, which further demoralized soldiers. It was impossible to escape. In the attack just now, the direction of the garage was not spared. All the soldiers there were killed and turned into zombies. Now the garage is separated by a horde of corpses a block away. Duan Hessian was also among the crowd. He kept firing with a blank expression, and at the same time he was telling other soldiers to try their best to take the lead. In the previous battles, he had discovered the only weakness of the zombies. As he fired, his eyes were fixed on the two figures among the corpses. Those were two middle-aged couples who turned into zombies. The off-white casual clothes they wore were particularly conspicuous among the zombies all around them in black military uniforms. This is Duan Mingqing and his wife, who are also his parents. But Duan Heshen didn't cry out, he just shot silently, shot again. His eyes were red, his breathing was heavy, and even his hands were trembling, he just hid the endless anger in his heart. At this time, a messenger ran over and shouted loudly on the defense line, "People from the staff department gather urgently. People from the staff department. Come here as soon as possible. Major Feng Tao is going to hold an emergency meeting." Duan Heshen thought that he was also promoted to second lieutenant by Feng Tao before, taking over from the slow-acting staff officer, so he gritted his teeth and ran back from the defense line. Immediately other soldiers ran over to fill his position, firing continuously to stop the corpses. In a residential building in the rear, several medical soldiers were holding Feng Tao tightly. His eyes were white, and he let out a roar, and after a while, he shouted loudly again, "Call the staff, the staff. Come. I'm here. I can't hold it, for a long time." Duan Heshen and several other staff officers rushed in, only to see that the bitten place on the back of Feng Tao's hand had turned black, and the black had spread to his whole body along the blood vessels. Now he relies on his strong body and strong will to resist, not letting the T-virus enter his brain. "Major! Here we come! Major! You have to persevere! Roar!" Feng Tao let out a beastly roar, and he struggled desperately, his strength getting stronger and stronger. Two more soldiers ran over to help hold him down. After a while, Feng Tao's pale eyes recovered a bit, and he said intermittently, roar. I can't, oh, ouch, bring me, to, Lu, roar. General Lu. Tell, him, roar. Research, In the end, he let out a roar, and the black substance along the blood vessels finally covered his entire head from the neck net. He struggled violently again, screaming like a beast, opening and closing his mouth, even the corners of his mouth were torn apart. Tie up Major Feng with a belt. Put a cloth bag over his head. Put him in a box. Let's retreat. A senior staff officer with the rank of captain made a decisive decision and immediately made arrangements. But, most of our troops are still on the eastern defense line, another staff officer said tremblingly. Forget about them. The most important thing for us now is to bring the news back. Don't tell those soldiers, they can buy us some time, and we are the only ones to go. The senior staff officer said firmly. Without saying a word, Duan Heshen stepped forward to untie his belt and tied Feng Tao's legs. After packing up, the people in the staff department took a few guard platoon soldiers and began to prepare to leave. Duan Heshen took a deep look at the back. Over there were still 200 soldiers resisting desperately. The zombies in the city are constantly approaching here. Although there are only about 1,000 in number, with the cooperation of Lickers and Cerberus, they are still difficult opponents to defeat. And, Duan Heshen took a deep breath, my parents are there, he thought to himself. Chenyuyan. I remember you. I will definitely take revenge. Will. Thank you for the 2,190 book coins rewarded by AI. Thank you for the 1,000 starting point coins rewarded by Tiandajizi. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 207. 206 I am the boss. The countless dark clouds in the sky began to gradually dissipate, and the sunlight that had been sprinkled but was blocked by the clouds illuminated the earth as if a curtain had been drawn. The air still seemed a little humid, but after the thunderstorm, the faint yellow mist that had always shrouded the air dissipated a lot. Looking far away, the whole person's vision became much clearer. But the killing in Iron Hammer Town is still not over. Boom. Chen Yuyan shot a zombie in the head, then kicked open the door and walked in. This residential building has 3 floors, but the stairs leading to the 3rd floor are blocked. It seems that the Nod soldiers who occupied this place before are quite cautious. Chen Yuyan first went up to the 2nd floor to have a look. There was only a headless corpse with a lot of blood on the upper floor. The blood flowed continuously along the wooden floor, and accumulated on the ground into a large pool of black blood. When he returned to the 1st floor, he saw an alcohol stove for marching in the kitchen, and a few tin cans scattered around. It seemed that the soldiers here were preparing hot cans for food. But no matter what they are, if they are invaded by lickers in such an environment, there is only one death word. In an assassination operation in such a dark environment, there is only one creature that can be said to be sure to win against the licker, and that is the alien. In addition, the licker is simply a nightmare in the dark. However, there was no way to know how many people there used to be. Those who were killed by the lickers would have basically turned into zombies if their heads had not been destroyed. Just as he was about to go out, there was a slight noise from under the stove next to him. Chen Yuyan pouted, walked over and turned off the gas stove on the stove. All I could see was a soldier wearing a Nod army uniform huddled in the narrow space under the stove. "Come out, you are a prisoner now," Chen Yuyan said. Who knew that the man burst into tears, and his face was full of joy. "I'm a prisoner. Haha, I'm a prisoner. I don't have to be eaten by monsters. Thank you, thank you, thank you." He quickly got out, and he didn't know how this guy who was nearly 1.8 meters curled up under the stove. This person just got out, but saw a licker slowly crawling over beside him. As soon as he saw the licker, he let out a scream, and his crotch was immediately wet. But the licker just turned around and probed with its tongue, ignored him, and crawled away. Chen Yuyan didn't pay much attention to this person, turned around and went out to continue leading the soldiers to wipe out the remnants in the town. Red Queen 00001, Red Queen 00002, and Red Queen 00003 are back online, waiting for your instructions, Master. The voice of the Red Queen also came through the communication. "Stop talking nonsense, take over B.O.W's command immediately, and wipe out the remaining soldiers in the city," Chen Yuyan said immediately. "Good master." Chen Yuyan took Yi all the way outside, but saw a chosen one leading a team of soldiers fighting a group of zombies. Chen Yuyan moved closer to see how the chosen ones fought at close range. He found that these chosen ones did not use guns, but they could use various spells to help other soldiers fight. It's true, in the era of hot weapons, it's really not as good as a .45 for a mage to rub a fireball. Of course, becoming a legendary mage is another matter. However, the sorcerer in front of him also made Chen Yuyan's eyes light up. He only saw that he used the greasy technique to make those zombies stand unsteadily, and then used the shocking undead to make these zombies stunned or move slowly. All the zombies were wiped out effortlessly. These people are really magicians. Chen Yuyan's interest greatly increased. This is a living magic in front of him. He watched with great interest, but he didn't notice that Yi was also watching. Countless circuit-like lines appeared in her pupils, constantly rotating. These mages are obviously not high-level, but they are very proficient in using various low-level spells. It can be clearly seen that with the Chosen One, the combat effectiveness of that team of soldiers has more than doubled. On the west side of the town, where Feng Tao's forces held the last resistance position, the fighting was almost over. After a night of hard work, with occasional survivors joining in twos and threes, the barrels of the 5 tick tanks turned red, and finally wiped out most of the rushing zombies. The Licker and Cerberus also retreated after a few times with a lot of losses. Just when these survivors thought everything was over, Hunter Alpha arrived. After breaking through the defense line of Feng Tao's troops, they killed all the way here. As the ion storm gradually dissipated and the Red Queen took over command of the B.O.W, their operations suddenly became organized. Cerberus and Lickers began to disperse into groups, while hunters mixed with the remaining zombies and kept approaching. Some of the remaining terrorist robots also came here, and they hid, waiting for an opportunity to destroy the last 5 tick tanks that were used as cover. At this time, I only saw some Hunter Alpha making unbelievable actions. After they got close to the line of defense, they grabbed the Cerberus next to them and threw them behind the line of defense. The gunfire began to become chaotic, and after a few screams, the morale of these last soldiers finally collapsed. They began to flee in all directions, but were soon caught by faster hellhounds and Lickers. Under the control of the Red Queen, these B.O.Ws also know how to grab some alive to keep. At this moment, Feng Tao, who had already turned into a zombie, ran a long way to the staff headquarters, and finally sent the first communication with the headquarters since the ion storm. However, this communication is not a good news that Hammer Town has been captured, but this is the 2nd Armored Regiment of the Torch City Legion, which Major Feng Tao belongs to. Our department launched a surprise attack on Hammer Town during the ion storm 57 hours ago, and successfully captured Hammer Town 2 days later, but then they were attacked by unknown viruses and unknown monsters. More than 1,500 members of the 2nd Armored Regiment were wiped out, and Feng Tao, the commander of the major, was infected with the virus and died. Feng Tao's body is being transported back. Please prepare for isolation and research. The town has become like this. Can people still live in it? Lin Huo said worriedly, looking at the messy, blood-stained streets and dilapidated houses everywhere. Some soldiers have put on protective clothing and started spraying disinfectant around. Some other soldiers were collecting the corpses of the war dead and transporting them outside the city, preparing for Qinyuan to perform the super, Xiao, degree, G, ceremony. The worker ant drones have also come here, and what they clean up are the corpses of those B.O.Ws, reclaiming them grandly. Treating them differently in this way can prevent others from linking Qinyuan's salvation ceremony with resource collection. How about it? Do it with me? It was Qinyuan who spoke. He was sitting on the ruins of a collapsed house, smoking a cigarette. I've been in business for so long, and I just made a wedding dress for you. Lin Huo snorted coldly. You can't beat me. In every sense, it's as simple as that. Qinyuan took another puff of cigarette. Besides, we are just forming a team, and there is no meaning of annexation or not. However, the captain must be me. Why? I used to be the second child for too long. In this life, I just want to be the boss. Qinyuan replied. What did you do before you came here? He, the police. How can you look like a policeman? Besides, there is a saying in the policeman that you are the second child. Of course. Hey, do you agree? If you don't agree, then I'll beat you until you agree. Yi is here. Yi wants to fight? A clear and sweet voice like a silver bell came in disorderly. So, what is your mission to advance to the silver group? Lin Huo's tone was a little loose. Occupy the entire ruined city. Qinyuan replied. Coincidentally, me too. But it took you a few years to occupy only one corner of the ruined city, but I have already occupied 2/3 of it. Okay then, I'll join. Thank you for the 2,000 starting point coins that Aoye tipped. Thanks to 124 simple 865 for the reward of 500 starting coins. Thank you for the 200 starting point coins rewarded by Shang's Hillian. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 208. 207 Warlord of Torch City. Ha 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 ha. Qinyuan laughed loudly. He patted Lin Huo's shoulder vigorously, causing him to stagger for a while. If that's the case, then it's easy to say. Lin Huo slapped his hand away very unhappily. What can I say? Although we won this time, we exposed too many things, and more than half of Iron Hammer Town was destroyed. If Lu Weiwei sends troops over again, what will we do? Withstand. Actually, you know the answer, but you just don't want to say it, because you feel uncomfortable when you say it. Chen Yuyan lit another cigarette and smoked. He looked at Lin Huo, and handed over the bag of Dazonghua in his hand. Come en route. Lin Huo pushed the cigarette away in disgust. I am a mage. No smoking. Hee, that's so boring. Chen Yuyan put away the cigarette, took a big puff with the cigarette in his mouth, and then exhaled the smoke into the sky, but he didn't have any intention of talking. Lin Huo waited for half a minute before he sighed heavily and said, let's vigorously build the 3 villages on the other side of Xingfu village, move the people there and build Iron Hammer Town into a fortress. If you do this, I have completely become your vassal. Chen Yuyan didn't answer the question, but instead asked, what's your adjutant's name? I think his temperament should be a very typical soldier. His name is Jin Shan. He used to be an officer of GDI. He went to a serious military academy. After his team was broken up, he wandered around and was rescued by me. He has been following me since then. Lin Huo replied. No wonder he looks down on people. It turns out that he is from GDI. He has a sense of superiority. Chen Yuyan said, let him take charge of all our military affairs, including training, combat, etc. There are not enough manpower at present. Let Drago be his adjutant and bodyguard. Drago? That mercenary? Do you know that I sent him there before? Lin Huo glanced at Chen Yuyan. I don't know, but since he doesn't say it, I don't care. Lin Huo frowned. Who gave you confidence in your style of acting? Intuition for being a cop. I'll say it again, where do you look like a policeman? Now you see it? Chen Yuyan looked back at Lin Huo's gloomy expression, and said with a smile, I can tell you the answer, but you may not like to hear this answer. Say it. Chen Yuyan took a drag on his cigarette, and his eyes became deep. I seem to have given you many choices, but in fact your best choice will always be the one I want. And I'm not afraid of you making other choices. After speaking, he stood up, patted Lin Huo on the shoulder and said, let's make arrangements for the people first. Next, I still have a lot of things to discuss with you. Then he threw away the cigarette butt and walked away, and his voice could be heard from a distance, go, Yi. Dad will take you to drive a tank. The one that can transform. Okay, Yi exclaimed excitedly. Lin Huo looked at Chen Yuyan's back, shook his head after a long time, and said to Jin Shan, you heard it too, and you will continue to be in charge of all military affairs in the future. Let's integrate the forces in our hands first, and then how to arm the perimeter of Iron Hammer Town and come up with a plan. Yes. Jin Shan didn't say much, and immediately stood at attention and saluted. In the Nod Far East Theater, the Third East area is in the northeast direction. 200 kilometers west of Ruin City, Torch City. This is a medium-sized urban agglomeration with Torch City as the core and 11 towns around it, with a total population of nearly 400,000. It can be said that in the entire East Third District, apart from the central city of Guangshan, which is now in chaos, it is one of the largest cities. The city is orderly. Although there are no magnificent high-rise buildings, the residential area, commercial area, and industry are clearly distinguished. The streets are not crowded, but they are full of people, showing the vitality of the city. This city seems to have recovered to the level of a county-level city before the outbreak of the war. In such an end-time world, such a city, just like her name, is a torch that illuminates the surroundings. Although human beings are good at destroying themselves, they are also good at saving themselves from destruction. However, unlike the city before the war, there are patrols with live ammunition walking around the city all the time, barbed wire fences pulled up outside the city, and concrete forts and sentry towers that can be seen everywhere around the city, and even deployed on the top of some buildings. Quadruple anti-aircraft machine guns and gate machine guns. All this reminds people that this is an end time full of wars. In the center of Torch City, there is a building with only 2 floors but a large area. This building is decorated with a very Western classical flavor. In fact, it used to be a world history museum, but now it is the command center of Lu Weiwei, the actual controller of Torch City, the head of the Silver Legion. In one of the conference rooms, there is an oval conference table with a length of 10 meters. The 2 sides of the conference table are full of military officers at all levels, and each of them looks solemn. On the top, there is a man in his 30s wearing a straight gray military uniform. 2 long banners of the Brotherhood of Nod are hung on the walls on both sides behind him. The triangular scorpion tail badge makes the people can't help but feel awe when they see it. The man was thin, with prominent cheekbones and stubble on his chin, but his eyes were always closed. He is the supreme commander of Torch City, the head of the Silver Army Lu Weiwei. And the 2 scorpion tail marks on the shoulders of his military uniform also indicated that his military rank in the Brotherhood of Nod was Major General. Let me briefly explain, what exactly happened to destroy my 2nd Armored Regiment. Lu Weiwei said. His voice was ugly, like a duck quacking, but everyone present lowered their heads, dare not have the slightest slack. From the bottom of the conference table, 3 senior staff officers stood up. They were all staff officers of Feng Tao's army, and they left their troops and ran back from the hell of Iron Hammer Town. We set off at 11 a.m. on July 28, and the marching speed was not fast. We arrived at a position 50 kilometers east of Hammer Town at 1300 hours noon on July 29, and at this time, a large-scale ion explosion broke out in the area near the ruined city. The storm cut off all communication. A staff officer replied. Lu Weiwei turned towards this man, eyes still closed, his expression darkened. Then, according to the original plan, you should bypass Iron Hammer Town from the path around the ruined city, and connect directly with Chi Wei's Black Wolf tribe. After we have a stable foothold, we will launch an offensive against Hammer Town, right? Beads of sweat dripped from the corner of the staff officer's forehead. He lowered his head and said, "No. Major Feng Tao thinks that the coming of this ion storm is just his opportunity. We can take this opportunity to launch a surprise attack to directly occupy Iron Hammer Town and achieve it in one go. The ultimate goal of the battle." Feng Tao is dead. What do you mean, all the responsibility is on this dead man? Lu Weiwei asked coldly. My subordinates deserve death. But, it was indeed like this at the time. Major Feng Tao insisted on doing this. The staff officer replied tremblingly. You want to tell me that Feng Tao led his troops to march all day, and launched an attack on Iron Hammer Town without any rest? Such a reckless decision. What is your staff doing already? Lu Weiwei's tone became dangerous. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 209. 208 Lu Weiwei. General, the staff officer lowered his head and sweated profusely. Okay, let's continue. Lu Weiwei waved his hand. Our offensive in the first 2 days went very smoothly. Under the command of Major Feng Tao, we wiped out the reconnaissance troops in Hammer Town and turned them into blind men. Then we established scattered artillery positions and used tick tanks to build a defensive line to block them the exit of Hammer Town. After shelling Hammer Town for 2 hours, a 24-hour ultimatum was issued to them. The staff officer continued. You just let the soldiers stay in the field under the ion storm and issue a 24-hour ultimatum? Stupid. Since you are already preparing for a surprise attack, why don't you go into the city? Lu Weiwei's tone became severe. The staff officer whispered, Major Feng Tao is also worried that if we enter the street fighting, it will take a long time, which is very unfavorable for our long-distance raid. Then why do you think Hammer Town will surrender? Lu Weiwei asked coldly. Because, there is a ruined city behind Iron Hammer Town, there is nothing there at all, only 3 villages that look like primitive tribes, and there are Junkrat gangs who are constantly harassing and looting. Major Feng Tao thinks that once we start shelling and if the exit is blocked, they will have no way to go, said the staff officer. Then what happened? Then, Hammer Town was really all evacuated. I don't know where we went, so we entered the town. That night, the staff officer couldn't control his emotions any longer. Emotional, he fell to his knees with a plop, and burst into tears. Monster. They released the monster. Lu Weiwei's face became even more gloomy. Monster. What kind of monster? Didn't you take precautions? Monster, the staff officer was still crying bitterly. At this time, another staff officer stood up and said, we have prepared a complete defense. We have deployed heavy troops in the direction of the ruined city on the east side of Hammer Town, and arranged half of the people to watch the night. There are people around Hammer Town, the city wall separated, and there were 10 patrols under the city wall constantly patrolling, but, we were attacked. What kind of monster? One is a dog that can't be killed by bullets, and the other is the scariest. It is a human that looks like it has been skinned, but has no eyes, the brain is exposed, the tongue is very long, and the 2 paws are very sharp and developed. This kind of monster can move freely on the wall and on the ceiling, and it is fast and silent, said the staff officer. Lu Weiwei frowned, and he nodded slightly towards a man and a woman sitting on his left and right sides. The man on his left asked, how many monsters are there? I don't know, the staff officer shook his head, but judging from the damage they caused, there are at least 200 or 300. The city was invaded by 200 or 300 lickers, coupled with the raging ion storm, all communications were disabled, and sophisticated electronic equipment could not be used. To be honest, how many soldiers were lost for you when you were able to escape in the end? The young woman on the right asked coldly. She was a blonde Western beauty. The staff officer was sweating profusely, so he had no choice but to answer truthfully. After being attacked by this kind of monster, the corpse that was bitten to death will rise up and attack others. We can't resist at all. In fact, we were only able to gather around 200 people in the end. Although gunfire can be heard from other parts of the town, but, the road is blocked by hundreds of walking dead, and those undead dogs and skinned monsters, we can only let them fend for themselves. Finally, we abandoned the 200 soldiers and fled back. Where's Feng Tao? When he was about to fight back, he was bitten by a resurrected corpse, and he was also infected in the end. His last order was that we must bring him back and study him, the staff officer said. Lu Weiwei said, bring him in, let everyone see what our Major Feng Tao has become in the end. 2 soldiers pushed in an old wardrobe locked with iron chains from outside the door. They could only hear something struggling desperately in the wardrobe, which made the wardrobe rattle and roar like wild beasts from inside. All the officers present were frightened by this thing. An officer with the rank of lieutenant colonel stood up and said, General, since Major Feng Tao died of the virus, will it be contagious if you bring him here? No, I can give you the answer right now. This virus is called T-virus. It only survives in the air for a few seconds, so it cannot be transmitted through the air. The woman said. General, you know this virus? The staff officer raised his head in surprise. Open the cabinet. Lu Weiwei said calmly. With a bang, the iron chain was untied, and after opening the wardrobe door, Major Feng Tao appeared inside. All I saw was that his whole body was tied up with several belts, and the skin all over his body was rotting and cracked everywhere. Disgusting yellow-green pus oozed out from the cracks in the skin, and his face was completely unrecognizable. However, even so, he was still roaring loudly, opening his bloody mouth that was torn at the corner of his mouth and biting his surroundings. Everyone gasped and didn't even dare to speak. That night, all the people killed by the monsters will turn into such living corpses, attacking others everywhere, and the people attacked by the living corpses will also become like this, the staff officer said. There is such a terrible virus. Seeing Feng Tao's appearance, the officers next to him could already imagine what a terrible situation his troops encountered that night. Lu Weiwei waved his hands and said, "There is nothing wrong with you losing to the T-virus. But your mistake was that you gave the opponent the best environment to use the T-virus weapon. They accurately grasped your psychology." The ultimatum exposed Feng Tao's eagerness to the idea of seeking success, so the other party took advantage of this in turn. Feng Tao wanted to occupy Iron Hammer Town as soon as possible, but the opponent directly gave it up. Under such psychological effects, you can't go to the city if you don't want to. And once you enter the city, you will fall into a trap and enter a dead end. In fact, if the two sides fight with each other, even if they use this virus, they will definitely not be your opponents. We know we're wrong. General. Just please spare our lives. Several staff officers fell to their knees and begged for mercy loudly. However, at this time, a person stood up alone, bowed and said, "General, I did not participate in the decision-making of this battle. Can I be exempted from punishment? Who are you?" Lu Weiwei became interested. He stared at Duan Heshen. Although his eyes were always closed, it didn't seem to affect his movements at all. "I am the son of a tailor in Iron Hammer Town, Duan Heshen. When Major Feng Tao led the army to attack, Lin Huo evacuated the people, and my father thought that Lin Huo would definitely be defeated, so he hid secretly and prepared to join this way." Duan Heshen said, neither humble nor overbearing. "Then explain your second lieutenant's epaulets." "Major Feng Tao thought that I made the right choice in the chaos, so he let me join the staff." Duan Heshen briefly described what happened that night. Lu Weiwei smiled and said, "It's good to be calm in the face of danger and calm when things happen. Feng Tao died as soon as he died, but he left me with such a talent. Not bad. Not bad." He paused and said, "All staff members of Feng Tao's 2nd Armored Regiment will be relieved of all military posts and assigned to the infantry unit, and each will receive 20 lashes." After finishing speaking, he took another look at Duan Heshen and said, "Including you, Duan Heshen. Okay, the meeting is over. Regarding the plan after this loss, everyone should go home and think about it. We will discuss it tomorrow. Feng Tao's body, let the researcher people from the ministry took it away for research. I want to get a vaccine for this virus. The sooner the better." After everyone left, only Lu Weiwei and Liang Hui were left in the conference room. Lu Weiwei was silent for a while, and then said, "What do you think?" "Ni Dong, Marlo." The man said, "It's bad luck for us to hit the iron plate, but the loss is too big, alas," he sighed while clutching his forehead. "Lin Huo, I remember he is not an experimenter." Mero said. "It is true that the previous information did not show that he is an experimenter. The only doubt is that he has an elite army called the Chosen One, and the specific information is unknown." Ni Dong replied. "That means a new experimenter has descended on the forest fire?" Mero said. Ni Dong shook his head, "A novice experimenter with hundreds of liquors. How is that possible?" Lu Weiwei said, "Then, it means that an experimenter with strong strength found Lin Huo, and the two sides joined forces. Now our question is, should we send troops again to destroy Iron Hammer Town and avenge Feng Tao? Also, how many troops do we need to capture Iron Hammer Town?" Ni Dong shook his head again and said, "At least 4,000 people, and even if it is defeated, Iron Hammer Town may not be able to be used anymore, and its strategic value is not high. You must know that the situation in the ruined city has returned to the original point. No, it should be said that it is even worse. Difficult. The Black Wolf tribe is undoubtedly over, and the Junkrat gang should also be wiped out, which means that we may be facing a monolithic ruined city. Mobilize 4,000 people to attack Iron Hammer Town? Then Tailong will definitely take advantage of our loopholes. Moreover, if news of the annihilation of Feng Tao's 2nd Armored Regiment reaches Tailong, he will undoubtedly take advantage of it. There are actions against us, Lu Weiwei said. Maro snorted, then Feng Tao and those 1,500 people died in vain? At least for a short period of time. Lu Weiwei said, turning to Ni Dong, block all traffic and trade to Iron Hammer Town. I want to see how many points this experimenter has to supply such a large stall. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 210. 209 Open and Honest. Sign up to join the construction team now, and you will have 3 meals a day. Meet once every 2 days, and the daily salary is 50 yuan. A man with a loudspeaker shouted while walking on the streets of Iron Hammer Town, attracting many people's attention, and interested people have signed up in the past. Protection and service, protection and service, protection and service. The short, clumsy protector-type guard robot swayed and walked on the road, repeating the set language while repeating. Sir, please step back a little bit and let me help you. After an NS-4 civilian robot waited for the old man next to him to stand up, its 2 mechanical arms grabbed a collapsed concrete block, and the engine inside it started to speed up. Run, directly lift up this piece of concrete. Then several worker ant drones next to it immediately crawled over and started cutting the concrete blocks, and then transported them away. The old man hurried over, took out the clothes that were under the rocks, hugged them in his arms, shook them clean and put them away, and said repeatedly to the NS-4 robot, "Thank you, thank you. This is what I should do." The NS-4 robot said, and began to walk elsewhere, looking for other people who need help. Another ant was pointing at her half-collapsed house with blood stains that hadn't been washed clean, and was yelling at her, but she was quickly taken away by the protector robot. What's more, teams of construction workers are working on those bombed houses. With the cooperation of worker ant drones and a small number of NS-4 robots, they cleaned up the ruins and began to rebuild Hammer Town according to the new plan. Although there are some discordant factors, on the whole, Hammer Town is still rebuilding in an orderly manner. The production of concrete is still not enough, and the labor force is still not enough. Generally speaking, everything is lacking. You said that you will provide meat to the workers, but where do you get so many points to carry back and forth from your world? In Lin Huo's half-destroyed villa, Lin Huo and Chen Yuyan sat facing each other. It doesn't matter, I will add 2 concrete factories soon, but the problem of site selection still needs to be resolved. Since we decided to put the main residential area in the 3 villages on the other side of Xingfu village, then this kind of factory is obviously it's not suitable for building over there. Chen Yuyan replied. Now he can't build buildings around Iron Hammer Town, and the completion prompts for the 2 tasks, controlling the population to 5,000 people and occupying the entire ruined city have not yet arrived. It means that from the perspective of the system, Iron Hammer Town is not yet his sphere of influence. What you said is easy. To open a new concrete factory, where do the machinery and equipment come from? There are also construction of buildings, recruitment of workers, all of which will take time. Moreover, now that Torch City has completely blocked trade with us, we are isolated. How can you develop in such a situation? It is impossible for us to endlessly carry things from our respective bound worlds, and we don't have so many points to consume, Lin Huo said, extremely depressed. Help me think about the location first. Chen Yuyan said to himself. There is a place. Didn't you say that among the 3 villages, the village head of a village is playing tricks? Just build the concrete factory on her side. Since she has been honest and hasn't caused trouble recently, she will be dealt with sooner or later. Right? It's better to put this opportunity in front of her. From another perspective, concrete can be produced nearby, and then used in the construction of the village immediately, Lin Huo said. A smile appeared on the corner of Chen Yuyan's mouth. Then I will deal with this matter immediately. In addition, regarding meat, I have the technology of artificial meat production plants, and these things will be gradually completed in the next few days. Lin Huo frowned and said, "How much did you hide from me? It seems that you have very strong industrial capabilities, but it seems that you have nothing. It seems that we haven't had an open and honest chat yet?" Chen Yuyan said with a smile, "Let's talk about you first. Why have you been hiding the truth about yourself as an experimenter?" Lin Huo looked out the window. "This is a long story. Actually, I did this to reduce the attention. After all, I am too close to Lu Weiwei in Torch City, and I don't want him to notice." He thought for a while, and then continued, "You know what? In this command and conquer world, the experimenters have brought about greater changes than you can imagine." Chen Yuyan nodded, motioning for him to continue. "Actually, the system will tell you about these things after you advance to the silver group. It's just that after such a long time, such low-level rules have already spread, and you can know if you pay a little attention." Lin Huo said, "In this world, there are 200 experimenters." 200? Chen Yuyan frowned. He remembered that in the world of Resident Evil, there were also 200 experimenters. Yes, 200, and always 200. If an experimenter dies, the system will immediately catch a new experimenter and appear in a random place. Constantly appearing? Isn't this a cycle? But the system arranges new opportunities for these experimenters to travel through time and space. Except for the very simple conditions for the first time, everything after that is related to the strength and sphere of influence of the experimenters. That is to say, if you can continue to expand, if you keep getting stronger, then you will be able to go to more worlds, Lin Huo said. Then you can get more cross-world resources, technology, and power, Chen Yuyan added while rubbing his chin. Yes. But it is said that this situation will stop when a certain condition is reached. At that time, the number of experimenters will no longer increase, and the possibility of truly dominating the world will be in front of us. Lin Huo said, "But the specifics are under what conditions, no one knows." "And then? What's the situation with these experimenters now?" Chen Yuyan asked. "The first batch of experimenters traveled to this world between the 5th year of Yujiju and the 6th year of Yujiju. At that time, the Tiberium mine appeared in this world. This group of people is also called the first generation of experimenters. Many of the first generation experimenters who were able to survive had extremely strong strength, but they should have all died." Lin Huo said. "Because of the last war?" Chen Yuyan asked. "That's right. The last war." Lin Huo said seriously, "Because around 5 or 6 years ago, the global confrontation between NOD and GDI had already formed, so most of the experimenters chose to join the two sides. In order to seek more opportunities in the war. In fact, they did it. According to the original plot of Command and Conquer, the last war should have only lasted for more than a year at most, but this time with the participation of a large number of experimenters, the most direct impact is, the war lasted for a full 5 years as long as." Chen Yuyan's expression became serious. "A world war that lasted for 5 years? Even if it was World War I and World War II, it lasted about 4 or 5 years. This scale can already be said to be the Third World War." "That's right, it's actually the Third World War. But because this war is the first war that broke out because of Tiberium mines, everyone calls this war the First Tiberium Mine Sub-War," Lin Huo said, "and those first-generation experimenters were still growing slowly at the beginning of the First War, but as the war went on, their strength became more and more terrifying. Finally." Speaking of this, Lin Huo's expression even showed some fear. "Finally, the monsters of the Gold Group appeared, That's right, the experimenters of the Gold Group. Almost everyone who has reached that level can face an army alone. And the various armies and technologies they brought back from various worlds have made the war almost out of control.